Hi everyone, it's Ileana and I have a beautiful card to share with you today. I really liked how this one turned out. I did a lot of experimenting and this is what I ended up with. So first I'm going to start with this Unity stamp set. It is a Feather Soft Love cling mount stamp. I purchased this when I was at Junkie Fest when they had the little vendor booths there. I started off by prepping my cardstock with some anti-static powder, and then I'm using my Ink on 3 embossing ink to stamp this a few times. I did try several different colors, and I ended up going with Clair because I wanted to have the feather have kind of an impact with the Fine Tech watercolors that I'm going to be using. I didn't worry too much about any of the stray embossing powder because there are specks all over the doodle of the stamp. I was just worried that there was this lump down at the bottom and I didn't want it to show up. So I did use a dry brush to get rid of that extra embossing powder. Once I heat set that, I did use my microfiber cloth from Ink on 3 to rub away any of that anti-static powder. I am using this Fine Tech watercolor set and I did swatch it out and it shows up best on dark cardstock, and so that's why it's swatched out on black. So I've picked 3 colors, and because I'm going to add a lot of moisture to this cardstock, I'm going to go ahead and use my purple tape to tape it down to a piece of particle board just so that my card doesn't warp on me. I did add some water to the pigment and that kind of causes it to create the watercolor. So you want the mica and the pigment to have some time to fill the water, if that makes any sense. So I'm just starting with the simple layer, and the more layers of pigment that you put, or watercolor, I'm not sure what these are called, but the more that you layer it, the more opaque it becomes. And so I did do a few layers, and the reason was because I kept messing up. So I just went back and I added more layers. And luckily you could see the embossing on the cardstock, but in real life you kind of had to turn your head a little bit so that you could see where the lines were because it is clear. Now you can remove the color if you do mess up just by adding some clean water and dabbing it up. So I'm just adding some some colors in different spots just to add interest, and then I go back and I change colors, and I picked 3 colors that would complement each other. And so you can see right now that the color is a little bit opaque, but the more that you add to it, the more intense it becomes, and it just looks really cool on the black cardstock. So I did add some of this coppery color. I'm not really sure what color it is, but it's kind of like a gold but copper at the same time. And at first, when I first made this card, I did use gold embossing powder, I used copper embossing powder, I used silver embossing powder. I didn't like how any of that looked, and so I ended up using the clear embossing powder, and you can see that it does make an impact on this. Now here I decided that I wanted to try to add some veins to the feather, and I just wasn't getting a good line, and so I ended up just coloring it again. And I'm going to try it again on this blue. While the red or pink is drying, I moved on to a different area. You do want to add these extra little lines when the paint is dry. Otherwise, it's going to feather on you. No pun intended. So once again, I tried and I still couldn't get the veins to work. And so I went ahead and added a little bit more color. And I'm going to try again and darken these up over here on the blue. And finally, I just switched to a smaller brush just to see if it would work a little bit better. And if there's one that you don't like how it turns out, you can go ahead and remove the color, add some more of the on top of it. And so finally, I'm happy with it. I created this really fast mask, and now I'm just going to use the same colors. I'm going to just splat some of that ink on it. I may have gone a little overboard, but I really loved how the metallic color looked on the black cardstock. So you can kind of lessen it if you want, but I kind of really liked the way it ended up looking. So once it's all done, I am going to go ahead and cut it out with the stitch rectangle die from Simon Says Stamp. I like this set if you're going to have a border around the cardstock, and I had previously tried to cut it with the Lawn Fawn one, but it was the full card, A2 card size, and I did want to have a little bit of a frame, and so I went with the Simon Says Stamp one. Now I am adding a bunch of adhesive to the back, and the reason why I'm doing that is because one, the cardstock is a little warpy from the heat embossing and the moisture, and two, because I'm going to use this Concord and Ninth Love Notes die, and I'm going to need that adhesive to stick to those tiny little letters. I popped my panel back into my MISTI, and I'm using my creative corner, the L one, to line up that die because the die is a rectangle. This way I know it's completely straight because I can't see on the other side of the die. So all of the letters popped out with the die, but I need somewhere for the letters to stick, and so I just put on this little piece of Post-it tape on the back of it just so that it would catch the letters. I didn't want the letters sticking to the foam because I didn't know how well it would adhere, so I was worried they would pop off, so that's why I put the Post-it there. Now I don't want these letters to go directly on there, so I'm going to set them aside because these are the letters that have the splat on it, and so I used a piece of washi, and the back of the washi will hold the letters temporarily with the adhesive that's on them, and so they're just kind of being held there in the meantime. So I'm going to build up this letter, the letters here. So what I did was I cut it out, and then I'm going to pop those letters in with my craft pick. And I need the center of the O. And now I'm going to do another one. I do this about 3 times, but you really don't want to do it 3 times because the letters get a little too thick and they start to kind of fall over. So you can do this 2 times and then you'll be all set. And then you can add the top layer, which are the letters that have the splat on them. So that way it kind of like blends in, but you still have a sentiment and it doesn't detract from your feather. So you can do it this way, and then I do have a different variation that I'll show you in just a second. So I'm just popping these letters, and it's really easy to line them up and just set them down. So I'm going to add this panel to my card base, and I don't really want to remove all of the sticky, so I just do the middle part, and then I kind of reach under and I remove the remainder of the adhesive. So I know it's centered because if I mess up, it's easier for me to pull off just the center of the adhesive. I hope that makes sense. So now I have this all completed. And the other one that I did, I wanted to have the letters pop up. So what I did was I took that same gold and I just wet my brush and I just kind of used the side of the brush to color them in. And it was really easy to do the letters and not get anything on the background. So here are the 2. Let me know which one you like better, the one with the gold letters or the plain one. And thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and the like button. Have a great day. Bye.